So we humans, when we need energy, we eat food. For plants, they have to make their own energy and make their own food, and that is through photosynthesis. What they do is they get CO2 and H2O, and they use light energy to create the chemical energy, which is glucose, and the byproduct oxygen happens here. For cellular respiration, this process is basically breaking down the glucose made from photosynthesis into CO2 and H2O, but these are the byproducts, and the main product the plants aim to produce here is ATP, which they actually use for energy. So photosynthesis is the making of the energy, and think of cellular respiration as breaking down the compact version of the energy into a usable version of the energy. So the reactants for photosynthesis are CO2 and H2O. You need these, but the main source of energy is light energy, and the products glucose, obviously, we need this, and oxygen is created as a byproduct. For cellular respiration, we take the products of photosynthesis, glucose, and oxygen. We then break it down, and in the process, we use the potential energy from the glucose bonds are emitted, and those are what make the ATPs. And the products are CO2 and H2O. These are the byproducts. So to kind of look at the steps really lightly, not very much in depth, just to give you like a whole idea of how this process happens, photosynthesis is divided into two steps, the light reaction and the Calvin cycle. So for both photosynthesis and cellular respiration, I try to remember the steps through these two diagrams. So just have these two pictures in your mind, and kind of think about them as you're solving the AP biology questions, like the MCQs. So on this part, the light reaction happens, ATP and ADPH is produced, and it is used in the Calvin cycle, and from the Calvin cycle, glucose is produced. And glucose is produced, and that's basically how it happens. The cellular respiration, in my opinion, is a little bit more detailed and very, a little complicated. It has more steps. It has 4 in total. Glycolysis is when the glucose is broken down into 2 pyruvates. The link reaction is the pyruvates getting pushed into the mitochondrial matrix, because where the ATP is generated in the mitochondrion, and glucose that is broken down into pyruvates should be pushed into the mitochondrial matrix for the ATPs to be made. Next is the Krebs cycle. So the pyruvates, they meet like an enzyme, and they become acetyl-CoA, and then it goes into a Krebs cycle. It's a citric acid cycle here, but that could also work. And the Krebs cycle happens. This is obviously in the mitochondrial matrix. Then it is the oxidative phosphorylation, and it is also known as the electron transport chain. So from the Krebs cycle, the energy that is generated from the Krebs cycle feeds into basically NADH and FADH2. And these two molecules they go through the electron transport chain, and by they do ATP synthesis with ATP synthase, and from that they create 34 ATPs. This is where the most ATPs are created, and from the Krebs cycle and glycolysis, 2 are also created respectively.